Well, just about everybody knows that Texas and oil, well, they go hand in hand. But what you may not know is that this week marked a historic milestone. It was the beginning of the modern age of oil in the Lone Star State. Here's KVUE's Bob Buckaloo with tonight's backstory.
They say it looked pretty much like this, a small collection of buildings in a place called Gladys City, a few miles from Beaumont in southeast Texas. It was here that a man named Anthony Lucas had a hunch. Because there was a large salt dome nearby, Lucas was convinced that oil could be found if he drilled deep enough. Now, most geologists back then had their doubts, but Lucas persisted, and this week in 1901, Anthony Lucas and his hunch paid off. The earth rumbled. Drilling pipes came shooting out of the ground, then mud, then natural gas, then oil. A stream of oil so big that it shot 100 feet in the sky and flowed for weeks, 100,000 barrels a day. Probably something like that scene in the movie Giant when oil rains down on the character played by actor James Dean. Soon, oil wells popped up everywhere across East Texas. The so-called Lucas Gusher at a place named Spindletop Field changed history. It was the birth of the modern oil industry as upstart companies like Texaco and the giants that later became Exxon and Chevron got their start right here. By the way, the folks in southeast Texas still celebrate the Lucas Gusher each January and pump a stream of water from an old oil derrick. That's exciting for sure, but just imagine how Anthony Lucas must have felt 123 years ago this week. Bob Buckaloo, KVUE News.